The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Monday.
No, is it really?
It's Monday. And what is it today? Early voting day.
Early voting day started today. That's right.
Early voting.
Get down to City Hall. You can vote from 9 to 5, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And on Wednesday, you can vote 9 to 7. And then the following week is election week, so we're that close.
Actually, I had a meeting at City Hall today, healthcare meeting, and it was an early meeting. We normally meet at 9 or 9:30, but it was 8:30. And I got out. We had a short meeting because it was just going over a few numbers, and I got out of there at about 9:05, and I walked through the poll area there to get to my car, and I asked, did you get anybody yet? And he said, oh, the first one just walked in. So at 9:05, they had exactly one person that had voted early. But you can't avail yourself of that, so there's no reason, no excuse not to vote. You have early voting, absentee ballot voting, voting, and let's exercise your right as an American and affect our government.
Did you do early vote? You didn't do early voting?
No, I like to go to the polls. I like to get the feel of it.
Yeah, exactly.
See the people holding signs.
Yep.
See who's holding signs and talk to everybody around the polls to see what's going on. You turn out and it gives you a feel. You're in it, and you're in the process. It's too easy going on and vote early and. Vote early. If I could vote more often, I would. I'd vote.
Vote early and vote often.
Vote early and vote often, but I can't. So we've got a lot of things, I guess.
Well,
weekend flush caused a little consternation.
Yes, I understand you were even confronted with it at Government Center.
Well, yeah. Well, at least you're being read. So because
somebody's reading me.
Yeah, somebody's reading you, and I was broached. I was told that it had been posted. Mm-hmm. Once or twice it had been posted, but then again, where is it posted? In the government center toilet, or who knows? But look, the fact that we got an anonymous letter about the position kind of says that somebody was interested probably in that position.
Exactly.
And that's the reason they sent us the stuff like saying, I wasn't going to apply for it because I knew they already had somebody in the tank. But that's the problem with these postings. As we said on the last show, I think there should be a vigorous attempt, especially entry-level positions. And what disturbs me most about that whole thing is we talk about the unemployment in Fall River. We talk about the residency requirement. Yet who do they get for an entry-level position? Somebody that lives in Seacon.
Exactly.
You're not going to tell me that if they really, really looked. I mean, if you got positions like that, it should be posted. You should have, even if you say you're going to have a job fair and get a list of people who are willing to get into entry-level positions at some point in time and work off that list of Fall River residents. I mean, it disturbs me when I see people, and even when it's obvious nepotism, patronage, but it disturbs me that we can't even get Fall River people in entry-level positions. You're just not trying hard enough. If you told me the position required a PhD or a bachelor's or a master's or anything, or specific, licenses and stuff, you'd say, okay, well, that precludes a lot of people.
Exactly.
But an entry-level position, I mean, come on.
Most of those entry-level positions have on-the-job training portions of them.
Exactly.
So there's no excuse. And here's the problem. Here's one of the bigger problems that I have with this bull about hiring out of the city. And this is why I support a citizen residency requirement. We're giving our city tax dollars to somebody to go spend in another community.
Yeah.
And that bothers me. You look at the IDA, they've got a person who only works 4 days a week and gets a full-time pay, and she lives on the Cape. How much money is she actually spending in Fall River? Probably not a whole heck of a lot. So how
Zero.
can she, right, so how can she, who's supposed to be building up economic development, be building up economic development when there's no money coming into Fall River from her?
She is, at the Cape.
At the Cape, exactly.
She's building up the economic development of the Cape. But no, as you said, CJ, you're not going to tell me that somebody in Fall River, if you told them, look, it's an entry-level position, you're going to come in, we're going to teach you the job, and you're going to learn some skills, and there'll be a career ladder, and you get a pay, you get health care benefits. I mean, there are a lot of people that would really jump at that chance in Fall River.
And
you cannot convince me there was nobody in the city of Fall River. I think if they would have actually really aggressively marketed that, they would have probably had 500 applicants for that position.
Well, here's the thing that gets me. We have a mass hire, BCTC, down on North Main Street in the old unemployment office. I remember when that was an unemployment office. My gosh. I'm getting old. Did they list it with them?
I don't know.
Was it listed on mass hire? I mean, because if it had been, I know that it would have shown up here on our screens, because we post jobs all the time coming from mass hire. So if it was a job for Fall River, I'm sure we would have posted it. So I have to ask, was it posted with mass hire? Because that is transparent posting. Posting it on the bulletin board outside of human resources isn't exactly transparent posting.
And even if you put it in a newspaper, who reads like page 32 in a little column this big? It's like when you look at real estate transfers. I mean, I don't know anybody. I know a lot of people who read the obituaries just to check to see if they're in there. But I don't know anybody that really, every single day they read the real estate transfers and stuff like that. You bury stuff in the newspaper. How many times have we seen announcements that are required by law in the newspaper, and people go, oh, I didn't know that. Well, what? It was in the newspaper. Well, I mean, the Herald News is selling so few newspapers, they moved out of the city.
Yeah, and the thing about that also is the law hasn't caught up with technology, and that's one of the problems, because they require everything to be posted in the local newspaper. Well, what happens if you don't have a local newspaper? Like Taunton doesn't have a local newspaper anymore. They still publish it, but they don't have it anymore. And you have to question why. They're in Brockton, and they're the same company that owns the Herald News. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that? And the law just hasn't caught up because, again, the Herald News doesn't publish legal notices on their website, as far as I know. I've never been able to find them. So what good is it to post it if nobody can find it?
Well, my problem with it is that, I'd like to see people in Fall River get Fall River jobs.
So would I.
And I mean, especially a job that is entry level, that you don't need a heck of a lot of qualifications for. And I'm sure that there are, like I said, just for the health care. I mean, they'd go in and say, look, you got decent health care, you get benefits, you got a retirement system. And obviously there is a range and a salary. And of course, if you go into an entry-level position and you can do a lot more, the salary range might be $35,000 to $45,000, depending on your skills. If you can do Excel and a couple of other programs, and otherwise they have to teach it to you. And just like anything else, the salary is adjusted. There's always a range. It's not just this is the salary.
Right.
Well, it's an entry-level position. You have to have enough skill to execute the job. But if you have to learn virtually everything about it, you're going to start at the low end of the salary range. And like I said, regardless of the salary, you're looking at a government job, health care, benefits, Maybe not like the people with the automatic cost of living increases, but then again, we see that all the time.
Hey, I know people that will take a job with a pay cut just to get health benefits.
Yeah.
So, because health benefits are the expensive part of any salary. Let's be real.
Well, there are a lot of people that run for public office, even like city council, which is fundamentally a part-time job because they get better health care through the city.
Actually, they don't anymore. Elected officials are no longer entitled to health care benefits except for the mayor. That came about in the new charter.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's being done.
True. This is true.
You just, again, something I have to check into because, I don't even, look, frankly, and I'll say it, I don't even pay attention to the charter anymore because
Exactly.
they disregard it. That's why we want to get rid of it. I mean, when have you ever seen a charter provision? It's like the residency requirement.
Right.
It's in a charter. They're not entitled to it.
We also have a city ordinance on that.
But that doesn't necessarily mean they don't get it.
We have a city ordinance on that, by the way. And that city ordinance was passed because of Linda Pereira, who's on the city council now. But according to the city clerk's office, the reason they can't enforce it is those stinking unions. The unions won't concede to it, and therefore, if they can't enforce it on union employees, they can't enforce it on any employee. That's what they're saying, because it creates a dual standard.
That's BS.
I know.
So you're saying they can't enforce it because the unions have a stipulation in their contract they can live within so many miles or they can live out of the city.
I guess so.
But normally that's not true for the initial hire.
Right.
It's after you've been on a job for a while, then you can move out of the city. So when you're a probationary, you're supposed to live in the city. And that's not binding on everybody else because not everyone has residency clauses in their contract. At least they didn't when I was around. Not every single union had it. And so what? So now you change it. You change it. Don't they bargain collectively to replace contracts so the city can say, well, they had a big, huge, excuse me, I got a little cold here, but they had a big row. They went 5 years without a contract in Boston because when Menino got in, you remember, he basically said everybody who works in the city of Boston will live in the city of Boston.
I remember that.
And everybody flipped out, and the firefighters union in Boston, which is a very powerful union, they have 2,000 members and they get a lot of dues, and they have their own credit union and restaurant, nice hall and Florian Hall, and they refused to settle for almost 5 years, and finally, they went 5 years without a pay raise, and they finally came to some ground. Menino gave a little bit too, because Menino not only wanted everybody to live in the city, he wanted everybody that was on a job to move into the city now, come back to the city. And they went, hell no, because I think about 2% of Boston firefighters lived in the city. They lived in Braintree, they lived in the Cape, they lived everywhere but Boston, and they'd commute in.
Well, what's interesting is I remember, I don't know if they still do this or not, but I remember when I took the police civil service exam and the fire civil service exam, the cards, they send out the little white cards that says, you've been chosen, da-da-da-da, go schedule your appointment. It says residency requirement. It used to always say that on the cards, that you had to be a resident to get the job in that particular city.
Yeah, and look, like I said, there's no reason they can't renegotiate. Menino renegotiated, and they finally came to resolution. They settled that contract. What he did was he grandfathered everybody in. Anybody who lived out of the city could stay out of the city, but all the new hires have to live in Boston. And he did that citywide, and that's why everybody in Boston loved him, because the taxpayers were saying, we're paying all these people our tax dollars and not spending any money in Boston. But that ultimately happened. There's no reason a city couldn't do something like that.
No, you have to have a mayor who's got a set of cojones to do it.
Well, when they were closing Quonset, and I took the test for the fire department in East Providence and the fire department in Fall River, East Providence told me right out of the gate when I went for the interview, and they were going to hire me, but I chose Fall River. They told me right out of the gate, you got 1 year. You got 1 year probationary period. You're going to go to the training academy for 3 months. Then you're going to be a probationary for the next. At the end of that year, you have to have a residence in East Providence, or you're fired.
Right.
You will not be hired as a permanent firefighter. You will not, and they were really clear about it. I don't know if it's still that way, but look, you can do that.
Well, I know Rhode Island's still that way because when I was considering a position as head of healthcare over at the ACI, it specifically said I had to be a resident of the state of Rhode Island. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They wouldn't even consider me for the position if I didn't establish a residency first.
Yeah.
So that's an issue.
But look, the charter is a disaster. We'll be looking to change that charter shortly. The weather's breaking. Hopefully, I'll get rid of this cold. And
yeah, we don't want you going around for signatures, have everyone get a cold.
And it's not the coronavirus. Don't worry about it. It's just a head cold.
Oh, well, I knew it wasn't a coronavirus. I didn't see a Lyme around you anywhere.
That's right. Yeah, a corona. So we've got some.
Well, before we move on, because
go
we're
ahead.
talking about the fire department a little bit, I want to congratulate Jason Burns. He's had another baby girl over the weekend. So congratulations. I don't know how many kids that is now, but he's a good Irishman, that's for sure. Good Irish Catholic. But congratulations, a child is a gift from God. So so far I hear the baby's quite well and healthy. So it's going to be.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
We like to see healthy babies.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. The other thing is we got a couple of messages on the show already. Vote early and vote often is the official slogan of Cook County, Illinois, for the Democrats.
Oh, yeah.
And when are you finding a newspaper that has 32 pages nowadays? I don't even know if the Globe has 32 pages nowadays.
The Sunday paper.
And that's all advertisements.
The Sunday paper. I don't know. Look,
all advertisements.
Newspapers are now with the instantaneous media. We understand, and it's unfortunate, but it's true that the media, and then of course it's also been exacerbated by the media, because the media doesn't report news anymore. They're basically political, pseudo-political bodies that basically push one point, one agenda or another agenda.
Exactly.
I mean, you look at some of the reporting, it's crazy. I mean, you look at now Russia's back in the news. Russia's interfering with the elections. They're working for Bernie and for Trump. So it's crazy.
Well, I can understand working for Bernie. He's a socialist.
Yeah, well,
it's close enough.
He's
But-
taking a lot of heat for that, too, by the way.
I know.
They brought up an old interview where he was kind of defending Fidel Castro, and
Hey, if it's out there, they'll find it, and that's the thing. But just to move on now, because I know we've covered the elections, we've covered residency, we've covered some of the weekend flush. How many people heard that the school department's going to be asking for $1.67 million more in their upcoming budget? That's on top of the money given to them in extra by the state. $1.67 million more.
And how much of that is being spent on teachers and on direct classroom impact? Because, again, the school department is the greatest example of how throwing money at a problem doesn't cure it. We see the academic lack of progress with our students.
Academic failure. Let's say it the way it is.
Well, we lack
Academic
of failure.
failure.
You're
trying to be nice.
In
I'm
a
not.
positive way.
I'm not trying to be nice. I'm told I'm negative, so it's negative.
Lack of but then we see all these jobs being created: chief of staff, CFO, and BFO, and BFI, and you name it. They got an acronym for it, but they're getting a ton of jobs. And
Well, I can tell you with the state money, they said they were going to hire more school adjustment counselors, 32 paraprofessionals, which is direct work for the students, and I guess a few more administrators to oversee these other people. But I mean, I don't know if we need a hell of a lot more school adjustment counselors. Okay, I mean, you're looking at cities like Providence, which is now looking at getting rid of the SROs, because the SROs are actually traumatizing the students.
Oh, yeah, that's the trauma. The snowflakes can't even stand it if they're
Exactly.
being protected.
Right.
But then when they get mowed down, somebody
They
goes
start
to
screaming
school,
about it.
They'll scream about the
Right.
thing again. It's just like air traffic controllers. They began air traffic controllers when the hijackings, and then there was no hijackings for a few years, and they eliminated them. Oh, we don't want them on the planes, and we don't need them, and now they're back. You have air marshals. Did I say air traffic controller before? I don't know. But air marshals. And, but again, the snowflakes can't, they need an adjustment counselor for each person. There's 5,000 students, we need 5,000 adjustment counselors because they can't adjust to anything. It always fascinates me how years ago, there was no such thing as half of these psychological disorders now, like attention deficit disorder. You know, you went to school, people, you got disciplined if they did wrong, if they, they were educated.
Well, let me tell you
and
something.
nobody was traumatized by every little that they need a safe space.
Right.
You can't say, yet the same people who are out there demonstrating for a safe space are the ones that are trying to yell and slit the Republicans' throats. Fascists don't have the right to speak, which is untrue.
Well, I'll tell you, when I went to elementary school, we had the perfect school adjustment counselor. It was about this big, it was about this wide, and when it was swung, you felt it. And your attitude was adjusted rather rapidly.
Yeah, let's face it, if half the teachers that we had in school were still teaching, they'd be in jail right now because they put them in jail and they'd lose their jobs because you couldn't do anything like that today. You can't even look at them cross-eyed.
I know.
And because it's a lawsuit, it's your problem. And they wrap themselves in cotton, then they release them out of their little cotton cocoons. And then they wonder why they can't adjust with real life. Because, there's an old saying, life's a bitch, then you die.
That's it.
And when you get out in the real world, there's nobody going to get you an adjustment counselor. When the boss says either work or you don't have a job, well, that's the reason a lot of these, and you look at it, it's got long-range ramifications. Why do you think so many millennials support Bernie Sanders?
Because they get everything for free.
Get everything
they don't
for
have
nothing.
To, they're not accountable for
They
anything.
can go to college, waste their time and get a degree that they can barely get a minimum wage job with. And then when they get that job, they don't want to work because the boss actually says you have to show up, when I want you to show up, not when you want to show up. And they quit. So now they want everything for free. So they love Bernie because Bernie's going to let them go to school, forgive their debt, give them free health care, give them free everything, and everything gets everything for free, but we don't care how much it costs. We don't know how much it costs. But I blame the system. The politicians, of course, are going to pander to whatever they can. But you got to blame the parents, because sometimes I wonder how do these parents evolve? When we grew up, you wouldn't come home and tell your father that the teacher got on your case, because then you'd probably get another chapada and say, well, what did you do wrong?
Yep.
And then you couldn't go run and emancipate yourself and bring them all to court and sue them. And for the most part, ironically enough, most of these generations turned out pretty well. If you look at the men who fought in the Second World War, they lived through a depression. They had bread lines, they didn't have jobs, they had to suck it up. They had pride, though. They didn't want it to be on welfare. It was considered it was considered an insult to be a welfare case. But today, it's like a badge of honor. So you wonder, I'm always fascinated how that deterioration took place, because if you were brought up by a parent who would listen to your excuses, expected you to behave properly, and there was positive behavior when you did, and negative consequences when you didn't. When you did the right thing, you got rewarded. But when you did the wrong thing, you were punished. But today, you can't punish them. What you got to do is get them a psychiatrist. You know, your kids will screw up, and the first thing these parents today do is say, what did I do wrong? Not what did he do wrong. Oh, he must have done that wrong because of me. We didn't let him give him a seat at the table. It's you know, it's the destruction of a society. You look at this, and it's growing. I don't think there's enough right now to take over. I find it hard to believe that a socialist will be elected in the Midwest and in the South. But you see that population growing all the time. You see the radical left growing all the time. And you see these kids running around demonstrating and forgetting where they are. In America, you have the right to have a different opinion, but if you have a different opinion from them, they're vicious. But if you even raise your voice to them, they have a nervous breakdown and go try to suck on an exhaust pipe. So, I mean, I don't, you know, it's beyond my comprehension.
Yeah. And what's interesting is all these millenniums want all of this stuff for free, and they have no understanding of how it's going to be paid for, like you said. Well, Bernie Sanders said how it's going to be paid for. He's going to raise taxes on the middle class people, on the middle class. He's not, you know, he says he's going to raise it on millionaires and everything else too, but he's going to raise it on the middle class people. We barely have a middle class now.
Yeah.
Can you see hitting a middle class worker with a 33 or 37% increase in taxes?
They said at one time he actually said that he wanted a 50% tax rate across the board.
Yeah, he's looking at doing it the way socialist countries do it, you know, like, you know, what is it, Sweden and Portugal and everything else, where they've got a value-added tax, which is a sales tax, which runs anywhere from 7 to 12 to 15%, and then they have the state income tax, the federal income tax, which is somewhere around 50 or 60%. I mean, you're paying 72% in taxes. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, and you're right. But as much as I disagree with that system, Sweden, number one, has the highest suicide rate in the world, I think.
Yeah.
But they do have a great healthcare system. And a lot of people don't realize, but in Sweden, you make more money after you're retired than you did when you were working, because you don't pay taxes.
Right.
So the government, unlike the American government, which, like Friedman said, if you give them the Sahara Desert, they'll run out of sand. See, that won't work in the United States, because the first thing they've been doing is attacking Social Security, Medicare. They don't want to take care of the elderly, but they want to tax everybody to take care of the people who should be working. So that's the reason. In Sweden, they tax everybody, but the people do, not that I agree with that kind of taxes, I think they're regressive, but they do have a good healthcare system, and they do have a great, when you retire in Sweden, you're not worrying about paying for your Medicare, for your medical expenses and your drugs, and you're not worried about your income, because you actually get a higher income after you retire. So you got to remember, just like these countries whose governments are based in religion can't really have a democracy because there's no separation. There are certain countries that do things differently than we do, and we could not make Sweden work here. It just wouldn't work.
That's true. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Wednesday.